Neil, thanks very much for your time today. Can I ask you to start by introducing yourself and tell us what your role is here at Newham Council?
Yes, I'm Councillor Neil Wilson. I'm the Executive Member for Equalities and Social Inclusion. I've been on Newham Council since 1994, lived in this borough since 1981, I think it was, but really pleased to have that role in the most diverse, we claim, the most diverse borough of any part of London.
So you have the equalities brief for the council. What does that mean in practice? What are you actually doing?
Well, obviously it's been strengthened really, my role. I was one of the first cross-cutting portfolios, which is a jargon way of saying really that we were cutting across all the departments of the council at the time, now called service areas, and looking at both the service delivery, obviously to our residents, in terms of the major equalities indicators under the new Equalities Act, but also including in a very real context in Newham, the socio-economic disadvantage. We are quite high in the stakes, as it were, for as a borough of multiple deprivation. So we look at a whole range of factors across not just race and the cultural diversity, not just gender, sexual orientation, age, disability, religion, but overlying a lot of that, the idea that we've got to examine issues of class. So we feel we're quite unique on that. I'm quite proud of the fact that we were one of the first to put the social inclusion title in there, because it is an inclusion issue. We're very inclusive in our education services, and we try to be inclusive with not just our work with other partners, but our residents. So it's doing with people rather than to them.
So what's right at the top of your agenda for action then?
Well, over the last two cycles of the council, we're elected for 4 years. We've got a directly elected mayor and the council. The real priority is employment and trying to make certain that our local residents have greater access to the employment market. Obviously that's been exacerbated by the current economic climate. So it's employment at the top of the agenda, and from my perspective, how we make certain that people are not just job ready, but actually having some experiences within the labour market. So often they've been excluded, and because of our mobile population, we have a lot of churn. We try to make our strapline a reality to allow people to live, work and stay. Now, if we want people to stay within the borough boundaries, it means that we need to actually make certain that there are employment opportunities, not necessarily within the confines of the London Borough of Newham, far from it, but they have stable or sustainable progressions into employment.
So how does employment and equalities interact? How do the two things work alongside each other?
Well, obviously, I mean, I have set targets from the Mayor, particularly around our new information, advice and guidance project, where we are looking at not just people coming to councillor surgeries or to the Mayor's surgeries, but more importantly to look at our web-based information that we're constantly trying to improve, advice where people have sometimes life-changing circumstances. They may have split up with their partner, they may have childcare responsibilities, they may have gone out of the employment market, they may have been unemployed suddenly and they're needing more advice. And the guidance in terms of our workplace initiative, where we're getting people in, we have worked with partners like John Lewis's at Westfield, where people are not guaranteed jobs, but at least get guaranteed interviews. So there's a whole lot of exciting developments, but we must be very clear that the prime responsibility is on the individual. We will offer services, but the information, advice and guidance has to be tailored via the individual, and then we'll try and get them onto the right path. But it's an equalities issue because so clearly Newham, along with a lot of other authorities, need to do more on people with disabilities. I have a real challenge set by the Mayor and my health colleagues in terms of mental health and disability issues with mental health episodes, but also we're working closely on that one, but also in terms of, for instance, black African male unemployment is very high. And we have an increasing proportion of black Africans in our population, but male unemployment within that group. And I could go on. So the diversity means that targets have to be set and looked at in terms of not just age and gender, but also their history, the profile of people's employment history, and also their family circumstances, or their cultural background, or whatever. Some of the issues around worklessness are historical and intergenerational, particularly amongst the white working class communities. And so the equalities issues, I would say, are complex, but we've done the analysis very well, I think, as a society. And I think Newham mirrors this, but we're very good at working out the needs of our population. We need now to tailor some of our programs, like this information, advice and guidance, so that people have really constructive packages, not packages laid on, individualised, personalised, call it what you like, specific to the individual needs, so that they are allowed, sorry, not allowed, that's the wrong word, that they can participate within the workforce, and it's not a permission from big brother or big sister, it's that they feel confident and get the right skills. It's a piloting scheme. It's only just recently coming into pilot stage. We've taken a long time to get to this stage because we want to get it right. In some cases it will involve advice when people come into our service centres. In others it may be packages of support. So with resource implications there, packages of support, in other words financial support, we need to be clear on what our criteria are. People need to have certain residency, you know, how many years they've lived in the borough, and that it won't be, you know, that people can keep coming back for packages. But we're looking at some quite exciting innovative schemes around that. So it's away from just, oh, here's the information, now it's up to you, go to an employment agency or go to the Department for the Work and Pensions. It's about how we might signpost them to via our workplace in order to get more skills, and also sometimes, as I say, even financial support.
Newham's particularly prided itself on taking a very locally based approach of trying to bring all the different parties together, taking a strong overall strategic direction for what it's trying to achieve. How's that really working out in practice?
Yes, I mean, we've obviously got some, if we're talking about a local strategic board, meaning that, I mean, so often, and I have this joke with colleagues, that strategy so often has been seen in the past as something out there, up there, away from the reality of people's lives. Without a strategy, though, partners don't often get involved enough. So the strategy has to be constructed in consultation with partners. So if we take the employment one, it's a borough-wide strategy, but it often, as I say, has to be tailored for the individuals and for the needs of where the facilities are in terms of area. Historically, East London has been a receiving area for new communities. People come in at different points in their experiences. Some are coming here for sometimes horrendous reasons, fleeing from war-torn societies in Africa. They come at a different skills level to those, and a different set of experiences from those people, shall we say, who are third generation of worklessness in Canning Town. The areas are changing demographically. I think they're becoming more complex, and so it's even more important that their equalities and cohesion strategy, the one that I've been seeing through the council, is implemented in terms of its employment, which we're focusing on today. The employment part, the employment arm, if you like, is seen as a holistic thing. It is linking in with housing strategy, it's linking in with our education and skills. It's easier to say in an interview like that. It's a lot of hard work, and my colleagues will tell you on the executive that if we don't have a vigorous and rather forensic sometimes examination of the impact, not just in terms of equalities impact, which we're obliged to do, but if we don't have real demonstrable outcomes rather than just output sort of targets, if we're not having those, then particularly with a restricted budget, we're not going to carry on doing things that we no longer feel are effective. We haven't got money to waste, as it were, and I think sometimes that discipline has been useful. We would argue we could do so much more, particularly with our deprived populations, if we had more in terms of the resources that we could lay on. However, under a restricted budget, we're not staying still, and we need to work in dynamic partnership with those people, from I think we've made terrific progress. At one time, we were not even aware of certain groups. Now we have very clear surveys, we have perceptions as well, not just of our council services, which we ask quite a few people about, but also we do link with what other partners are doing. The problem is, if you have an economy in East London that has been historically dependent since in the post-war era in terms of public sector services, because of the changing economic circumstances, that will have an adverse effect because there's more people who are losing their jobs in the public sector. We need to be, I think, really aware that we've got three things going on. One is that we've got always a churn, an in-out movement of population. We want to make more stability within our communities, so that's why it's an area-based model. Yeah. Two, that we have an economic imperative to work very closely with partners, because the council has never pretended it can do everything, but particularly under the current circumstances where we're looking very closely at our own budgets and financial constraints. And thirdly, that we are developing a resilience agenda anyway, where the very important concept is that we have personal resilience, so people themselves are more able to adapt to changing circumstances. Communities have a community resilience, so that's why it's a community-based model. And we're having community hubs delivering services, not just in terms of we may be going along, we're piloting this information, advice and guidance, but people are aware of where things are. So often in the past, particularly people who have lost confidence, can be very isolated and disconnected from what is going on economically. And thirdly, that we have to be very aware of the fact that we are not just in an economic climate that is going to be increasingly difficult, but that we as a borough need to be working at an economic resilience, so that we are working with partners, not just Westfield as a big shopping centre, but we've got these other big regeneration projects. We have, the mayor and my colleagues are constantly having meetings with people to try and encourage more and more private sector investment, inward investment. And we're linking into more innovative ways of looking at other employment providers.
And where does Equalities fit into that?
Well, obviously ESF, because of its targeted approach, needs to work, we need to work very closely with those providers who have got ESF funding, because those targets are often on targeted groups, particularly some we've mentioned already. Shall we take the disabled group, those with physical disabilities? We have a history of working alongside those people who are providing services in our NewCo as a project, for instance, as a workshop provision. But most importantly, if there are sometimes sub-regional cross-borough issues that ESF are delivering, we need to be aware of where it is, and Access to Jobs team would know that, and they are working closely, and so would Workplace. So it's about signposting, it's about saying, look, this is going on over here, as it were. When I say over here, I don't mean geographically, but within a particular project. If and how and when. So it's if it's feasible, we'll try it. We'll try and link in with it. How are we able to best develop closer cooperation, and when is set by people like myself and my employment, other colleagues on the council, in terms of the officers very often to work out how we can link in with that. I mean, there's several disparate strands to anything to do with the European Social Fund. That's how it's been constructed. What we need to do, I think, as local authorities is to make certain that we're maximising the potential in terms of, sometimes, as I say, the innovative thing we're particularly interested in, because our borough has changed throughout the time I've been here. It's a constantly changing, and I would say exciting environment. It's not so exciting for those people who are left out of it, or who have been excluded from the labour market, or have seen either their families or their family circumstances changed, and their economic situation changed because of redundancy or whatever.